Chris Hayes had such a great segment yesterday exposing the scam that Congress is running on us with the Farm Bill.
It's a story you're not going to see anywhere else on television. Yesterday, the House passed a compromise version of a 5-year extension to the Farm Bill after more than 2 years of contentious debate. Now, there are some good provisions in the bill and some very bad ones. We're going to talk about that in a moment, including cuts of more than $8 billion to food stamps. There's one tiny provision that is the center of this particular story, which has gone almost completely unnoticed. The original version of the Farm Bill passed by the House last year had a requirement in it. It required that crop insurance subsidies paid out to members of Congress be disclosed to the public. And that was a really good idea because it meant that we could find out who was directly benefiting from the subsidies they were voting on. That is not an academic issue. Last summer, the Environmental Working Group calculated that 15 members of Congress or their spouses took in $238,000 in taxpayer-funded direct cash payments through the Farm Bill subsidies in 2012 alone. Now, those farm subsidies, the $138,000, those come via direct cash payments. They're different than another kind of subsidy that come via discounted crop insurance. The recipients of the direct cash payments, they are already disclosed to the public, for one thing, but not those who benefit from the other kind of subsidy, the government's subsidizing crop insurance. In both cases, however, what the government is doing is effectively giving money to farmers, many of whom are already wealthy, and some of whom are Congresspeople. Republican Representative Christie dollars in farm subsidies through direct payments to her and her ranch since 1995, according to the Environmental Working Group. GOP Representative Doug LaMalfa and his wife have benefited from more than $1.7 million in farm subsidies, according to the group. And Republican Representative Stephen Fincher and his wife have reportedly benefited more than $3.4 million in farm subsidies over the years. Now, that is the same Stephen Fincher who quoted scripture to defend his vote to cut $40 billion from the food stamp program while protecting the subsidies to farmers, and who professes to believe this.
The role of citizens, of Christians, of humanity is to take care of each other, but not for Washington to steal money from those in the country and give it to others in the country.
Okay, so the earlier version of the Farm Bill, the one that passed out of the House, which you don't expect a lot of good provisions in that, but that one, it contained a provision requiring disclosure of the crop insurance subsidies that are going to members of Congress. But as the great Steve Ellis of Taxpayers for Common Sense pointed out to All In, something very strange happened when the House and Senate versions of the Farm Bill were reconciled in conference committee. Lawmakers quietly amended the bill to delete that requirement. That's right. Hundreds of lawmakers just voted to keep the public from learning how much lawmakers themselves may be getting through crop insurance subsidies that they themselves voted into law.
So they're voting themselves money, and then they got rid of the provision that at least made it transparent that when they vote themselves money, we have to see how much. Man, you know what this shows you? These guys don't believe in small government. All of these Republicans who take farm subsidies, hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes some people millions of dollars, these guys are socialists. They are socialists for themselves. It's rugged capitalism for the average guy and for the small businessman, but for themselves and their buddies in big business, it's big government all day long. It's subsidies, it's welfare spending all day long. These guys love welfare when it's for ExxonMobil, for fast food corporations, for investment banks and hedge funds and Wall Street and defense contractors. I mean, how much money in no-bid contracts did Dick Cheney, for example, give to Halliburton, who, whoops, would you look at that, he used to be in charge over there. So he gave his buddies this gigantic contract. You know, how much for Raytheon and Boeing and Kellogg Brown and Root, which is the subsidiary of Halliburton. I mean, it's so clear, it's so obvious that anybody that pays a conservative Republican, okay, and this a lot of the times is the case with Democrats too. There's very few politicians who aren't corrupt, who aren't bought, okay? But anybody who pays them, oh, they'll open up the treasury for you any day of the week, my friend. All you got to do is give a campaign contribution of, probably $5,000 or more, and that's it. You own that congressperson. They will rig the tax code in your favor. They will just flat out vote to give you subsidies, which is welfare, Isn't it amazing? Jon Stewart made this point in his debate with Bill O'Reilly. Isn't it funny how when it comes to, exploiting a government loophole so that your kids can eat, you're a moocher. But if you're exploiting a government loophole to give your already rich corporation more government money, you're a brilliant businessman. Look at that double standard, man. So don't believe these guys. This isn't an actual conversation. This isn't an actual debate about two separate but principled positions, where one says, bigger, more efficient government, and one says just smaller government and more private sector. That's not what's going on here. Maybe there's some fringe libertarians who actually are principled, but almost the entire Republican Party is totally bought and owned by Wall Street. They're willing to give those guys money, they're willing to give the rich and the corporations money, and they're willing to give themselves money. The only people who they don't want big government for is the average guy.